This week in IT SPARC Cast News Bytes, Signal goes all Snapchat on Microsoft recall. Microsoft dumps a lot of AI into open source, and Google invents a freaking universal translator.
Kapra!
Greetings and welcome to IT SPARC Cast News Bytes. I'm your host, John Barger.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt. There's been a lot going on this week. Let's see if we can cut to the good stuff.
It's Friday, May 23rd. IT SPARC Cast News Bytes is the digest of the news over the last week with a little insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years of experience working in IT or for IT vendors. And you've noticed that we've changed the name of this segment. So we're shaking things up a little bit. IT SPARC Cast News Bytes is our Friday segment where we're going to keep it just to the news, no CVE of the week, no hot takes. We're going to try to keep it down to about the 15-minute mark, maybe a little shorter, maybe a little longer, but right about 15 minutes. So you just get the news, and we'll be releasing other topics throughout the week where we do our CVEs and such. So keep an eye out for that. Let us know what you think. Send an email to feedback@itsparkcast.com or hit us up on X with however you feel about this new format. But let's get right to it.
Yeah, and are you, can you hear me now? Are you getting the signal? I would like to point out, however, that we were completely right about what was going on with Signal in our earlier casts.
Absolutely. So this is a really interesting article that came in from Engadget, and Signal is not happy with the way Microsoft Recall works on Windows laptops and computers. And there's a lot of people that aren't particularly happy with the way Microsoft Recall works. Now, this is a feature that you can turn off, but it is on, I believe, by default. And what Microsoft Recall is, for those of you who aren't aware, it's one of the new features coming in as part of Windows 11 that basically takes screenshots of your screen and whatever you're doing, and then uses local AI to allow you to remember, hey, what was that message that Lou sent me about the podcast that we needed to do X, Y, or Z? And it would remember, was it a text message? Was it an email? Was it a Signal message? Was it something else that was sent to you, and how it was sent to you, and then bring it to you? Or what web page was I on? And it would remember that through those screenshots. And it wouldn't keep the screenshots in totality. It would index it the way a large language model normally would, and then be able to then go find that information later.
And of course, you trust Microsoft with all your data, right?
Right. Anybody that monetizes its customers is perfectly safe for that. So Signal is evidently not having this. And so they are going to block the recall feature from working and being able to capture your chats through the Signal chat app. And what's really interesting to me as part of this is not that they're doing this. Any privacy-focused chat application you could see wanting to do this is the fact that has come out of this is that there is no, by default, security switch saying, don't record me. Don't record me, bro. What they actually are having to do is to say, I am a DRM-based application. I am a Disney Plus or a Netflix, and my content is subject to DRM. So you're not allowed to record me by law, and therefore you cannot do a screenshot of me. Now, so that gets really interesting into why isn't there a mechanism in Recall saying, don't record me, don't
record me.
And so it's just really interesting. So a little side note, I've got a MacBook Air, and the processing power and chipset for the MacBook Air says that you can have one external display as well as the internal display. So I can have my MacBook screen open, and I can have an external display and have both those running at one time. I wanted two external displays, and there is a way to do that. You can get some software. I won't get into the details of it, so you could actually run two displays externally off of that hardware. But it's done through software, and so it's a hack, if you will. When you do that, you can no longer watch Disney Plus or Netflix or whatever on that system because it sees that software running and it assumes that one of the purposes of that software is to record your screen. So therefore, you may be trying to pirate their content. So that's effectively the mechanism that's being used by Signal to say, no, you can't record this. I'm a DRM app.
Now, this is really interesting because when John and I were testing Signal earlier this year, one of the things that John found out is that you can screenshot Signal.
Right.
All right. If you just do an OS level screenshot, you can screenshot Signal. So this begs the question, should there be an OS level switch that says no screenshots? You can't do this.
So it's interesting because one of the features, at least it used to be a feature of Snapchat, I assume it's still a feature of Snapchat, is that you can flag a message that I don't want this to be get a screenshot. That was so that if I was sending sensitive messages to Lou or whatever it might be, I don't want that to get out to somebody else, so I could flag that. And I think the way it worked technically it wasn't that you couldn't screenshot it, is it would actually send me a message saying Lou actually took a screenshot of this, so that I now know I can't trust Lou with my content.
You just can't, dude.
I just can't.
And you know, this is going to be an even bigger problem, because the next question is, what if somebody points a camera at a screen?
Exactly.
Right?
And
but there are things I can do about that. There are things I can do if I have the right sensors. So this is something we're definitely keeping an eye on. There is a bigger privacy discussion within this, especially within the rubric of AI and what your operating system can see you doing, or what it can talk about seeing you doing. I mean, if you have OS level hacks, you've got some serious issues.
Well, and it's interesting, you know, like in the world of AI, if you want to use AI, you kind of have to trust the AI to know something about you and know a lot about you.
Yes.
And you know, it's an interesting world that we're moving into. And when you're privacy focused, what is that going to mean when it comes to, are you going to be able to move forward at the same speed as others when they're using AI and maybe you're not? It'll be, you know, like the people that decided not to use social media at all for privacy purposes, that didn't really impact their ability to operate their job, to be as efficient, right? To some degree.
You could go either way with this one. But my key takeaway from this announcement from Signal was somebody caught it and flagged it, right? Otherwise, wouldn't have been flagged.
Yeah, and my key takeaway, it really is the fact that there is no switch, no official switch saying don't record me. So
yeah, that's a problem.
But anyway, let's move on. Speaking of interesting recording and things like that, what's going on with Google Meet?
Absolutely. So I picked up this article from the Wall Street Journal, which I periodically peruse, from Nicole Nguyen, and she was given exposure to a new Google Meet feature that does pretty much inline translation, or interpretation would be a more accurate description of this, where it actually takes your English language and at this point just does Spanish, but it does it in your intonation, your voice. So, Universal Translator Stage 1. Now, we've seen a lot of stuff move around inside of this space before. There's a lot of people who've claimed to have had this, but this is the first time that I personally have seen a demonstration of something that not only translates what you're doing to a target language, but also brings in your personality. And I think that's going to be absolutely huge. So they showed it in Meet. We'll include in the show notes a link to the Wall Street Journal article. See the video, it's worth it. So the description is, it kind of mangles things on the first sentence because it doesn't have the context yet. Languages are very contextual, and German and English and Spanish are all put together grammatically slightly differently. But if you get the gist of what's going on in a conversation, you can do a pretty good job. And the folks that were in this conversation said it wasn't perfect, but it was really good.
Yeah. And it'll be really interesting to see how this operates, especially as they add more languages, because just for those that may not be aware of the variances between languages, for example, in Spanish and a lot of the Romance languages, you know, French and Italian and things like that, you know, the adjectives come after the noun. So instead of saying blue bird, you would say bird blue, and things like that. And so the ordering of things. And then in other languages, like you were talking about German, actions come at the end of the sentences and things like that. And so it's really the whole ordering of your sentence structure is different, which makes you can't do word for word translations, which means there's obviously has to be some sort of delay. It can't be instantaneous. And then it is open for interpretation. And as you get into more technical content, how does that come into play, and how do you interpret things? For example, the word for port on a computer on a switch versus port for a ship, and things like that. How do those things get translated, and how does it understand context? And that's again where AI would come into play. So hopefully
Exactly.
it understands
And
context.
there's a lot of AI in this thing. This week
Right.
was all about AI. But so
Well,
this is
one
one of
thing
those
I want to
things.
bring up on this, because where I think that for you, our audience being in IT, where this is going to be really a helpful area where you may not realize it right off the bat, is find the training folks in your company, the sales enablement folks, the other training folks. And this, when it starts to really get good, is going to be a godsend for them, because I used to run a training and enablement team for sales enablement, and Lou was on that team as well.
Yes, I was.
And one of the biggest demands that we had was from everybody outside of the United States was for localized content. And a lot of the content that we delivered was live, and then it was really hard to deliver localized on top of that. A lot of the pre-canned stuff we could localize much easier, but when we were delivering it live, having it delivered in Mandarin or Japanese or German or French was really, really tricky. So this is something that would have been so helpful when we were doing that. So bring this to them, and whatever the next flavor of it is, this might be something very helpful for them.
Yeah, this is definitely something worth watching. About all the other AIs, this demo, these are the kind of demos that are mind-blowing. Speaking of something that's moving from a project to production, though.
Yeah,
Tell us about the next thing?
Yeah, Google's also announced that they're moving their what used to be called Project Starline to an actual product called Google Beam. And what this is 3D teleconference. And so we've talked a little bit about this in the past when it was Google Starline. And they're partnering with HP and eventually others. So what it is 3D sensors, 3D cameras around effectively a big monitor, and it does 3D imaging on the screen for your teleconference. And as you move, you actually see the person on the other end of the screen. You see the edging of them, and they move. So if you see me moving, imagine if you moved and you see me moving in the same way. And it's think of if you've ever used an iPad on Zoom and the center stage, I think it's called, where it follows you around, but another generation forward, where it's actually interpolating the way your room would move and your background would move and all of that for you. And it's actually very cool technology. And as you move your hand forward towards the camera, it does all these amazing 3D effects. Now, Lou, give me your opinion on it, and then I'm going to talk about my opinion on
I
this.
think the important thing is that instead of saying, okay, this is 3D, and trying to simulate a generic 3D experience for anybody looking at the screen, it's focused right here. So if I'm like say I'm looking at your far image and I go like this, my screen will shift.
Right.
To take into account the fact that I'm trying to look around to say, wave at your dog or whatever. Your screen will not. And this does not require any glasses or anything on your face. It doesn't require a special display. This is a standard monitor technology. Yeah. So they're using an array of cameras and LiDAR and AI, because of course AI, to do this effect. And I think that is going to end up, it's probably the most compelling single screen example of removing the screen from between you and actually making you believe that you're talking straight to somebody that I've seen. I've seen it done with 3 screens, but this is the first time I've seen it done very well with 1.
Yeah. So Lou and I were talking about this pre-show, and I've got a little bit of a different take on this. And my take on it is that I think that this is an interesting science experiment. And I think that it'll be a fun demo. I don't see this rolling out and becoming mainstream until such time as we have things like mainstream AR glasses, and then this could appear in your glasses. And here's why. I was a big opponent. I did not believe that 3D televisions with the glasses was ever going to become a thing. And there was a number of reasons for that. One is my own issue in that just inside baseball, I only have vision in one eye. So I have low vision in the second eye. So I really don't see 3D, and 3D televisions don't work for me. So I had my own negative bias on it. But I also saw the fact that you had a certain number of people that had to have the glasses. You had to have a certain view angle. You couldn't invite more than 2 or 4 people over, depending on how many glasses you had. I had all these issues with it. But in watching the demos for this, obviously very, very cool. But I see scale issues. What if you have 10 people in the room? What if you have, if you have other constraints that we're not thinking of? How big of a room can you support? All of these other things. If this is a one-to-one thing only, how useful is it?
Optimized for one-to-one, in my opinion.
I just think that there's going to be
because we solved the multi-screen problem. Cisco solved that with the CTS 3000 years ago.
But how many people are ever using it? I've never used one of those.
That's the thing. Cost was the problem.
Right.
They were 65-inch plasmas. First of all, you had to and you had to have a special room because you didn't have AI to tune your environment.
Okay.
Because
here's the deal. I'm going to bet Lou $1.
$1.
$1 that 2 years from now, so we'll be towards the end of the season 3 of IT SPARC Cast,
and we'll be here.
And I'll set a reminder that we're going to see where this solution is and how many were rolled out, and we'll see who's giving who $1 on May 23rd of 2027. Wow. All right, so we'll come back to that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dip into the mailbag. And on YouTube, Robert Maxey reached out regarding our top 10 episode on the top 10 networking companies that no longer exist. And this is a really nice note. I just wanted to bring it up to you guys. So he said, I started with the Megahertz Corporation. We were located in Salt Lake City, Utah. We were bought by US Robotics and then 3Com and finally Manufacturing Services Limited. I built a number of Palm Pilots by hand as part of our PVT, which is the testing system. It was a hell of a time, especially when the X-Jack arrived. Megahertz designed that connector. They were initially made by hand. I miss those days. Thanks for the memory. So, Robert, thank you for sharing that memory with us, and I'm glad that you love that episode. So if you haven't watched them, go back and watch some of our top 10s that we did. We had a lot of fun with those. We won't be doing any top 10s for a while. We're going to take some of those and maybe come back to those at the end of the summer so I can spend some time with my kids. But we will be changing things up, as I mentioned earlier, as how we're going to be doing episodes this year. But send us your feedback on anything that we do, good, bad, or otherwise. We do read all of the comments that we get, again, whether it's positive feedback or what things that we can do better. And we do respond to most. And a lot of them we do read here live so that maybe you'll hear your name mentioned on that. But that will cover this episode. And we couldn't do this podcast without listeners like Robert and you. And we would love to hear what you think. Send an email to feedback@itsparkcast.com. That's feedback@itsparkcast.com. Or hit us up on X @itsparkcast. Or you can be like Robert and you can leave a comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It's going to really help this channel grow. If you feel that you are getting valuable information or we're hitting you in the nostalgia feels like we did for Robert, tell your friends and colleagues about us. That again, is also going to really help us grow. So with that, for the world of enterprise IT, take care.
Thank you.